All right. Good evening. Welcome to the Architectural Site Control Commission meeting for July the 24th, 2023. Laura Russell, please would you do your roll call?
Commissioner Flynn,
Present.
Commissioner Breen,
Here.
Chair Wilson,
Here.
Vice Chair Sill, and Commissioner Chung will be absent this evening. They're both out of town.
Right. Thank you. All right. We'll move on to oral communications, which is where any persons wishing to address the Architectural and Site Control Commission on any subject not on our agenda may do so now. Please note, however, that the Architectural and Site Control Commission is not able to undertake extended discussion or action tonight on items that are not on our agenda. We have one person in the audience. I'm not sure whether we have anyone on Zoom.
The only person in attendance on Zoom that's not for the next item is our council liaison. So there are no members of the public present.
Right. Who is our council liaison?
Craig Taylor.
We'll give it another.
I mean, we didn't start early, so I think we're fine. We can go ahead and close oral communications.
All right then. We'll close oral communications and move on to item number 1 on our agenda for new business, which is the architectural review of 3 new utility shed buildings for water treatment, retaining wall, concrete pad, and site development permits at the California Water Service Station number 30, which is accessed via 1 Indian Crossing. And Jake Garcia is hopefully online to present this item.
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Chair. And hello, Commissioners.
Good evening, Jake.
My name is Jake Garcia. I'm a consultant planner for the town, and I'll be presenting the item before you tonight. The item before you tonight is an architectural review of 3 new utility shed buildings for water treatment, a retaining wall, concrete pad, and site development permit at California Water Station 30, which is located within the Coal Mine Ridge Reserve and accessed from Indian Crossing via 1 Indian Crossing, which you may know as the Portola Valley Ranch Association Ranch House, their common area. This 1.07 acre lot is owned by California Water Service, and the square-shaped parcel is located entirely within the Coal Mine Ridge Preserve and accessed via dirt road from the parking lot at 1 Indian Crossing. And here's the trail map for the Coal Mine Ridge Preserve that kind of provides more context to the location of the existing California Water Service station. You'll see the access road, which leads up from Indian Crossing and results in the location of the water tank there on site. And you'll also see its relative location to the trails that run through that preserve system as well. The current facility or California Water Service is requesting approval to install a disinfectant residual boosting system at its Bear Gulch Station number 30, the one on your screen. In this water system, Cal Water uses chloramines, a combination of chlorine and ammonia as disinfectant to safeguard against microbial contamination of drinking water. The proposed work is part of an overall plan to upgrade the Cal Water system and increase water reliability to the areas being served by the station. The current facility includes an existing 1 million gallon water storage tank and associated infrastructure, and it's located on top of a concrete foundation. The site is surrounded by a 6-foot chain link fence with barbed wire at the top. And so this outer circle you'll see is the fence, which the proposed work is being located within that area. And here's the proposed site plan. The applicant's proposal includes the construction of 3 utility sheds. You'll see 1 utility shed is 8 by 8, 64 square feet. Shed for control. They refer to it as the control shed. And the other two sheds are 10 by 10, 100 square foot each, utility sheds. This is for the chemical dosing associated with their water treatment. These two sheds, which are west of the water tank, are in an area on a building pad that's been carved out by a retaining wall. This would be a 7-foot retaining wall and allows for the two sheds to be at grade with the water tank. And you'll see there the hashed area is the proposed increase in impervious surface that would connect the building pads to the existing concrete foundation. Here are the elevations for the control shed. This is the 64 square foot building, the smaller one to the north of the water tank. And we have a floor plan to the far right. And here is the floor plan for the 10 by 10 chemical dosing shed. And you'll see that the second shed in this area is almost identical. There is a eye wash shower station proposed to the exterior of the one of these sheds here that allows access between the sheds for any emergency purposes. And the proposed sheds are to be tough sheds with non-combustible materials, including a vertical hardy board panel, siding in grouse tan color, has an LRV of 30, and a Class A asphalt shingle roof in a golden cedar color, and that LRV is 35. The proposed colors and materials are primarily natural materials and are consistent with the design guidelines light reflectivity values. Here's the site plan showing the proposed tree removal. 2 non-significant coast live oaks are proposed for removal. You'll see them there marked in red in the location of the retaining wall and 2 100 square foot utility shed area. The project arborist provided an arborist report and identified no significant trees on site. These ones were the only labeled trees to be marked for removal. There's 180 cubic yards of grading proposed with this project. That's 175 cubic yards for the retaining wall, utility shed area, 5 cubic yards to connect the existing pavement to the proposed pavement. So California Water Service Station is located relatively far from residential areas with no immediate neighbors, as you saw on the maps. The property is located within the Coal Mine Ridge Preserve and is accessed via a dirt road from one Indian crossing. I went ahead and I hiked up to the site and took these photos for you all to see the general location of where this is being proposed. You'll see there is the perimeter fencing around the water tank. To the right of the water tank will be the location of the 2 10 by 10 utility sheds, and to the left of the first photo is the location of where the control shed would be, just inside of that fenced area. I should note that the trails within the preserve system intersect and sometimes run parallel to the dirt access road leading up to the project site. There's a trail running along the eastern and southern edges of the project site. However, the project site has minimal visibility from the trail due to the presence of dense vegetation growing between the trail and the perimeter fencing. And the topography of the area limits the view of the project site, which sits at a lower elevation than the trail. The last photo to the far right is on the rear side of the water tank and taken from the trail. So you may be able to see the location of where the sheds are, but it's very minimal and consistent with what visual impacts the site already has to the neighboring preserve system. And notice of the public meeting was prepared to be mailed out to all property owners within a 300-foot radius. But as you can see, the 300-foot radius falls within the reserve system. So no property owners were identified. One public comment was received by from the public and shared with the ASCC before tonight's meeting. And I'd be happy to read that aloud if you'd like, or if you'd just please advise me. And that's it for the presentation. I appreciate your time, and I am available for any questions that you may have. And the applicant team is also available. I believe you have one person in the building who's representing the project, and also 2 to 4 on the phone call who may be able to answer questions as well.
Right, thank you, Jake. Commissioners, do we have any questions?
I do.
Commissioner Flynn?
So my understanding is that one of the 10 by 10 sheds has the ammonia and the other 10 by 10 shed has the chlorine. In the event of a bad earthquake or anything, is there any danger that somehow those two chemicals might somehow come into contact on their own?
I'm sorry, through the chair, can I ask you to come to the table and speak to the mic because we're recording?
My understanding, there's no potential for it to cross connect with each other. And then we are also putting leak alarms as well. So we can have someone address any kind of leak that would pertain in the tubing to respond immediately to correct. We'll have ball valves to shut off any flow that comes out of those tanks.
And then the public comment was from the Portola Valley Ranch, and he expressed concerns on a couple of things. One was the road, the access road, this dirt road, and it's unclear to me who actually has jurisdiction for maintaining that road.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that?
From my understanding, it was an old agreement, nothing in writing, but we have always maintained that road all the way up to our tanks because we have a operator that goes up there daily to check that station. So we have maintained the road. We have cut down trees that have fallen. We've removed trees that have fallen along that road. So I don't know how much they have done in all the way in, but I know they have done pretty much at the entrance. But we've done pretty much the entire road all the way up to our tank site.
Because they expressed concern about the road needing to be regraded and it was spilling gravel onto their parking lots and dirt, and maybe with all the storms that there's needed some extra maintenance.
Yeah, it was one of the worst storms that we've ever seen in our. So I could imagine the damage. I removed some trees during that storm too on that road, but as far as regrading, we're going to need to have that road safe and continuously safe throughout the entire year. So whatever grading needs to be done. Right now, we have operators that go there every day. So it seems to be okay. We're not going to stage any material, only within our footprint of the station. So, and their parking lot, we don't see staging any material.
I'm worried that the public can't hear you, that maybe you need to speak, get closer to the mic.
And then how often will trucks or whatever need to go up the road in order to refill those tanks?
It'll be a very minimal dosage. So I would imagine once a month, if not once a quarter, because it's only the dosage is kind of like squirting. So it's not really like dumping chemical into the tank. It's kind of just maintaining a residual to provide superior water quality for the public, because our goal is to keep the tanks full for fire protection and also maintain superior water quality. And it's hard to achieve if you keep the tanks full because nitrification occurs. So that's our goal, is to keep the residual that SFPUC provides us and keep the tanks full in the case of a wildfire.
And then I just have a couple process questions. There didn't seem to be anything controversial about this project per se. I'm just wondering what was the bar that required it actually to come before the ASCC, because the total square footage of the new construction is less than 300. So is it the 7-foot retaining wall? What was it that made it come before us?
For any kind of commercial or industrial or public facility, generally speaking, if it needs a building permit, it's going to come to you.
Okay.
So there's a few exceptions, but the ASCC, we have a couple of small Cal Water projects that we're processing right now that you'll be seeing.
Oh, I see. Okay. And I guess the other question was, obviously nobody lives within 300 feet. And so there was no one to notify, but yet there is an entity that is impacted, and that's Portola Valley Ranch. So I'm wondering why they weren't at least notified, even though they're more than 300 feet.
Because the notification serves a certain legal purpose, right, to notify the neighbors. So we don't notify people that would just be interested. But it's actually a private property matter, not a town matter. Their relationship between PV Ranch and Cal Water and the maintenance of the road. We have assumed that there was an easement, and you know what I mean? Probably the easement doesn't have a lot of detail about maintenance of the road. So that's their issue to resolve. It's not a town issue. So that's the other reason why our review is really just limited to the appearance of what they're constructing compared to our ASCC findings.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I just want to say that we've always had a good relationship with the ranch, and ever since we've been here, I'd say 100 years, but we've always had an understanding of being good neighbors and stewards to the land. So we make sure that that road is good, because we have our guys going up there every day. So we need to make sure that road is safe and accessible.
Thank you. Well, we appear to have skipped from questions for Jake to straight to applicant questions. So I'm not sure whether anybody had any actual questions for Jake. No? All right. And did you have a presentation to put forward?
Me, no.
No. So we can now go to questions of the applicant.
Sorry.
Did you have anything further?
Well, I mean, I was sort of curious about the same thing in the event of an emergency. I know the site very well. I mean, the road crosses to San Andreas in like 2 places.
Yeah.
So, and I really pay attention to chloramine because it's very dangerous to amphibians. And which is why I had the chloramine in my water removed with a blue light. So I just want to make sure that really nothing could ever happen. And if something did happen and there was a spill, you know, what happens in an event like that?
Chlorine spill, we would, I'm trying to see if the last time we've ever, I don't even remember us ever having that, but protocol tells us we'd have to notify our engineering department. But we put these fail-safe features in place to hopefully we would never have to have that happen, a spill. So we have shut-off features, electrical solenoids that will shut off the flow immediately in case of an emergency or a leak. We have alarms that go straight to our phones that you can have someone respond pretty much immediately as soon as anything happens.
And obviously the structures are not flammable. So, you know, I look out at Coal Mine Ridge and it scares the hell out of me right now.
Yeah, of course.
So,
Yeah.
So that's good to know. But other than that, I think everything looks good.
Thank you.
My only question was a curiosity one, really. How many houses does 1 million gallons of water serve?
It serves all of Coal Mine, the ranch, the whole neighborhood of the ranch. We just installed a connection down at Valley Oak on the bridge there. So we have a connection that will go out to Los Trancos. So it'll feed all of Los Trancos as well. So if I were to put a number, I would say 500 homes.
Does anybody else have any further questions for the applicant?
Through the chair, we have a hand up on Zoom from Angelica from Cal Water.
Right, go ahead, Angelica, please.
I'm one of the engineers. I'm the TM on this project, and I wanted to answer the question about the seismic hazard. So we run a geotech report on this place because we know this is base of the Santa Cruz Mountains. So the pads where the sheds are going to be located we run an extensive geotech that is going to back up whatever seismic or any earthquake possible. Everything is back up through the geotech report, all the design.
Right. Thank you, Angelica.
Mhm.
Right. If the commission has no more further questions, we'll move on to public comment.
We now have, it looks like 2 members of the public have joined us. We have a phone number ending in 7562. I think that's Caroline. Just a second, let me unmute you. You're unmuted on our end.
Great, thank you very much. I'm very excited for new projects, but the way I understand that it's only for, this improvement is only for the area of the coal mine ridge and then the ranch. Is that correct? Then I believe that the planning director also mentioned today that there are several Cal Water projects going on. My neighborhood of Portola, Oak, what is it called? Stossel and Palmer Lane and going from Golden Oak up to Westridge, that area has been complaining and submitted our complaints and concerns to the planning department for years. We even met with the public works director and with the former town manager about this, and nothing was done. We have had several leaks. So it's great that Cal Water decided to do the upgrades, but when are the other upgrades done? Especially because the area that I'm talking about, that will be the area where you have new construction going on now that has been approved or that is in the approval process. And as Cal Water confirms, residents have to have a minimum of 40 PSI. We have 32 right now. We also have complaints about inconsistent water pressure, which causes a lot of damage. I have a formal complaint going, but I know several people in our area have the same complaints. So when is Cal Water going to do the other improvements?
Right. I believe that the applicant answered the question about the tank serving Los Trancos as well as Coal Mine Ridge and Valley Oak, but I'm not certain whether or not the projects that are currently in the works with the planning department do relate to Sossel and Palmer.
We have Nate from Cal Water has his hand up to the chair. Would you like Nate to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you, Nate.
Yes, this project is site specific to Portola Tank and Los Trancos and the ranch specifically. The other project that we have is another station, and both projects do not conflict with the what the residents talking about. Now, in the past 5 years, there's been 2 leaks on the street that Cal Water has addressed. Cal Water also has addressed the customer in finding ways to boost the pressure at said home. But just want to go on record saying that this project is not, doesn't conflict with anything on Sossal. This is only site specific for Portola Valley Ranch.
Right, thank you, Nate. All right, do we have any further public comment?
There are no other hands up.
All right. Thank you. In that case, we'll close public comment and come back to the commission for discussion.
I don't have a lot to say. It looks okay. As long as it's safe, and I'm not even sure that that's our purview. Our purview is about how it looks. So, yes, I think it looks good.
Thank you. That's definitely one of our main concerns is safety. And like you said, it's on that fault. So we got to make sure that we do this right.
Thank you, Commissioner Flynn.
Yeah, I think the project looks great. I mean, the aesthetics are good. It's low key. It's not visible from the neighbors or from the trails. Seems fine. Again, it's not so much our purview, but I do think you need to work out more than a verbal agreement about that road and who's going to maintain it and what needs to be done with the ranch, but that's not our purview. But I think it's important for the safety of the community that you have that put in more written form so that can be taken care of. But otherwise, the project itself seems fine.
All right. I'm in agreement with both of my fellow commissioners, so I'm ready to entertain a
I would
motion.
move to approve as submitted.
I second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Motion carries 3-0.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have other items.
Break for 1 minute.
Through the chair.
But I'm not saying.
Okay, we're on a 1 minute break.
All right, welcome back. We now move on to item number 2 of new business, which is discussion of the minutes. Their format, a discussion and recommendation. So I think that's between the three of us. When
Laura's going to pitch it to us, right?
Well, I'm going to give you some background.
Yeah.
all right. thank you.
And then you can have some discussion and provide some feedback on what you'd like to see. So, so that we're using the same terminology, there's usually 3 different style of minutes that can be used for kind of local government bodies like this. There are verbatim minutes, which are literal word for word verbatim transcripts, and those are usually only used if there's a legal issue or a legal proceeding or an appeal. So every once in a while we have verbatim minutes done, but it's usually for that type of purpose. Then the next level is what I normally call summary minutes. And it's what the ASCC and the Planning Commission had for many years. And so the person who types up the minutes uses some judgment and summarizes the minutes as they understand them, trying to hit on the main points, and it includes the discussion that happens. And so you actually can kind of track what the main points are as you're moving through it. So those are summary minutes, and those usually include the comments of the public as well. And then the less detailed version is usually called action minutes. And that just includes the things that happened. So that's just for the legal record of what were the actions that were taken. So what were the motions? Was there a subcommittee appointed? Was there specific direction that was given by a body? So those are the types of things that go into action minutes. So for quite a few years, the town had summary minutes for ASCC, Planning Commission, and Council. In a lot of cities, they don't do summary minutes anymore, and particularly for town council. And that's because more and more meetings are on video. And so that has changed in the last, I would say in the last 15 years, as more and more cities have gone to having videos. So we always had summary minutes because we had audio recordings, but they weren't great to listen back to. We made them available if people wanted them, but we didn't have videos. During the pandemic, obviously we went to Zoom and we started recording everything. So there was an interest, particularly of our previous town clerk, who was trying to bring best practices from other communities. And that management team made the suggestion that the town go to action minutes. There are legal liability reasons for that a lot of people see. There's some simplicity to it that some people like. So the idea is that the minutes only capture the main actions, and we don't run the risk of having the minutes being inaccurate. And then you don't have to spend a lot of time correcting the minutes because there's an acknowledgement that one could watch the video if you wanted to. So there was discussion amongst the council, and it's the previous council, not the current council. And the previous council made the decision that ASCC, Planning Commission, and Council would go to action minutes. because that is the prevailing best practice for other cities and towns for those reasons. So we're making that transition. There was quite a bit of concern from the Planning Commission, and we talked about it quite a lot on the Planning Commission. And then after thinking all of that through, the Planning Commission requested and the town approved for the Planning Commission to go back to summary minutes. So right now, the council is on action minutes. The Planning Commission is on summary minutes. And so we wanted to get feedback from the ASCC of what kind of minutes you think are appropriate for this body. So if you want to go back to summary minutes, for example, that we could talk about that. And I think what I would do is just take that recommendation back to the mayor so that we have, council weighing in on that. So a couple of the logistics, things to think about in the transition to summary minutes. It costs some money, but it is not prohibitively expensive. ASCC meetings only usually run a couple of hours. And so we have a transcription service. And so we have people that prepare those summary minutes for us. And it costs usually a few $100s. So, even in light of the town's current budget situation, I would not say that the cost of it is a significant factor. I think it is a good, reasonable cost if you find that they are useful. One of the issues that we had at the Planning Commission level was we had a lot of members of the public that were coming to the Planning Commission and requesting revisions to the minutes, saying that their comments were not accurately reflected into the record. And that presented some challenges because then the public was asking for amendments to the record of the minutes that didn't really change the outcomes or change how the decision was made. And so that was sometimes challenging for the Planning Commission to navigate whether they wanted those minutes to be changed or not. And would oftentimes then just say, thank you, we've heard you, but we're not going to go back and change these minutes because it doesn't change the nature of our discussion. Because it can just happen sometimes that the person who's typing up the summary minutes is going to understand that statement a little bit differently than the person who gave it. So that's just part of summary minutes. From a practical point of view, for those of us that implement approvals, both staff and ASCC members, since you're involved oftentimes with us in implementing conditions of approval, it can be very helpful to have summary minutes so that we can rely on those and go back and make sure we understood what the discussion was. So there really are kind of pluses and minuses. I do think, from my perspective as the planning director, I'm very open to both things. I see the benefits of summary minutes, but it does put a little bit of pressure on the ASCC if we had a controversial project, for example, to manage the public expectations about when the minutes would be amended. So that's some of the background. I'm happy to answer any questions about it. I think that both choices would be fine. And if we ever had an appeal, we would go back and do verbatim minutes. We would do that as a matter of standard practice. So happy to hear your discussion and your recommendation. And then I would take that back to the mayor if you want to make a change to summary, and then we can go ahead and do that. The only final caveat I would give is that it has been challenging to keep a transcriptionist. We did change transcriptionists, and there's not a lot of people who do this anymore, who actually listen to the minutes and type them up. And so we don't have staff capacity to do it. It's very time consuming. And so we could, someday reach a time when we're not able to easily fill that service. It sounds silly, but Sharon, our previous town clerk, had to reach out to like 5 or 10 people. And because since almost no cities do this anymore, people are not in this business as a specialty. And you'd be surprised how much this is not just like, transcribing something that anybody can do, but it takes some knowledge of what we're talking about to be able to summarize it. So that's the only thing, we can't guarantee there'll always be somebody, but right now there is.
Thank you for that explanation, Laura. All right.
This is an item 2. You should open to the public. So if you have questions for me, you should do that first, and then we should take public comment.
So do we have any questions, Laura?
I do. The videos, I take it it's just the Zoom videos that are available. Now, Zoom provides a transcript, right? Or is it
Yeah,
not?
we tried, but the Zoom transcript is really inaccurate. And especially because we have so much jargon and terminology. I did go back because we thought we'd be able to use the Zoom transcript when the council originally made this decision. But I went back and things were wrong and honestly weird. And in a couple cases, kind of offensive. Like, I don't know who programmed, do you know what I mean? That, but it came out weird.
Okay. And is there a difference in cost between providing verbatim minutes versus summary minutes?
Verbatim minutes are much more expensive. So you could easily like a ASCC minutes are shorter, but if you had a long ASCC minutes, you could easily spend 12 hours transcribing an ASCC meeting if you were doing verbatim. And verbatim minutes are very difficult to read if you're not used to them, because they include all of the ums and ands and filler words and everything else. Occasional, yes. It does happen.
In the event of an appeal, you said then you would release verbatim minutes? Is that, you
Yes.
you hire someone to actually go through and transcribe the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we use them as part of the administrative record so that we have a clear record of exactly what happened in the hearing.
And the current minutes are action minutes.
Correct.
All right, any further questions, for Laura? Right, in that case, we go to the public for comment.
We have 2 members of public on Zoom, and we have our planning commission liaison in the room. If anyone on Zoom wishes to comment, please raise your hand. Caroline has her hand up.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Thank you. Laura, perhaps you can let this board know that other committees and commissions have looked into other technology. I'm thinking, for instance, Angela Hay at the BPTS. She uses a very simple computer transcript changer. So there's other, then I thought that I think was race and equity. They brought up the topic as well, and they wanted to check AI and see if there's a possibility there. So I was wondering if there was any update on those both options.
So we have not looked into anything other than the Zoom transcript for Planning Commission and for ASCC. I consider both of those bodies to be different than our advisory committees because ASCC makes final legal decisions. And so we want to make sure that we are using a system that we feel confident in. And so if in the future, you know what I mean, those systems improve and we can get the quality of the minutes that we need, I'm sure we'll be transitioning to that at some point, but we have not looked into it as of today.
Right, thank you. Do you have any further public comment? In the room, we have Nicholas Targ, Planning Commissioner.
Thank you. Would you please, Nicholas, come to the mic? I know.
Hello, I'm Nicholas Targ. I'm speaking as a member of the public at the moment. I'm also on the Planning Commission. I live at 80 Hayfields Road in Portola Valley. As a member of the Planning Commission, I can tell you that I value the ASCC's work, your individual and your collective judgment, your expertise, and I benefit as a Planning Commissioner from being able to read the deliberation of this body and also to understand the interchange. I would recommend moving to action rather than, excuse me, to summary rather than action on minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Targ.
There are no other hands up.
All right, in that case, I will close the public comment and come back to the commission for discussion.
I agree with Nicholas. I've felt this way for a very long time. I think we need to go to summary minutes. I think for the commissions, I think it is educational to the council and to each other as the commission. I think it's very important that we know what each other is doing and that we inform the council what we're doing at the same time. I'm not sure it's as important for the council. You know, I mean, that maybe the council can stick with action minutes. The only thing that I feel about the council is that I think that the residents' voices need to be heard. And so I always feel strange when I'm reading minutes and I'm not hearing the public. I want us to go to summary minutes, absolutely.
Right, Commissioner Flynn.
I would say I don't have a strong feeling either way. I mean, I think both sides have good arguments. If we have the money to do it in the budget, then I guess I would say go to summary minutes unless we just, it becomes too expensive or there's nobody available to do it.
All right, my comment is really that I had reason to look at the planning commission meeting for a previous ASCC meeting that we had, and there weren't any minutes, and I had to go through the whole video to try and find the parts where the comments that I was looking for to verify a comment somebody else made, and that took quite a while because there weren't any minutes at all because it was the last meeting in May, and there hadn't been another meeting since, so the minutes hadn't been prepared with the agenda for the next one. So I would have found summary minutes. So I think can see the same reason for our minutes, really. But again, I'd like to echo Commissioner Flynn's comments about cost prohibitive, you know, whether or not it's going to increase to say $600 a set, or we'd have to wait and see. So, all right, so do we
Even
have?
if it was a cost issue, I think it's really, really important. I think it's important to the community. I think it's important to edify the council. I think they get too busy. And I think for them to have to go through, you know, the motions of looking things up, you know, on film, that's just too hard. I think they need to hear from each commission about what happens in detail in our meetings.
Right. Well, so is the general consensus then that we would rather move to summary minutes than action minutes? Yes. Commissioner Flynn?
Yes. We need to make a motion,
Do we make a vote? Is this
Um,
action?
or is it just a
discussion?
Oh, it's just a
recommendation?
discussion and a recommendation. So I'll go back because we do want council to agree. So I'll just speak directly to the mayor. And if it's okay with him, we'll go ahead and switch you over to summary minutes. If he wants to have a further discussion about it, then I'll let you know. So I'll provide you an update or we'll switch to summary once I have a chance to
So we'll
talk
go
with
to
him.
the full council, not just the mayor.
Well, I don't think it's warranted since we're increasing the level of detail. We're not decreasing it. If we were going to decrease it, I'd want to go to the full council. But since it's more information, I just don't want it to be only my decision.
Thank you, Laura. All right, so we'll move on from new business to commission staff committee reports and recommendations. Do we have any commission reports? I
Was
haven't.
there any feedback from Al about Dolan? Did he meet with them? I mean, that place is getting more and more exposed all the time.
They had an inspection canceled because their superintendent had COVID. So they're rescheduling, so it hasn't
Al
happened
was
yet.
going to take another look, and was Al expected in that meeting?
Yeah, they were going to go on site.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so
Good.
still, I'm assuming it's still to come.
Right, it is. But there are still 4 redwood trees
Well, the redwood tree issue has been cleared.
done.
So Kenny and Judy Murphy already reviewed the issue of the redwood trees. Al was going to go out on the other issues.
What were the other issues?
Implementation of their conditions of approval. So there was specific conditions from 2 different ASCC reviews. So some tree planting, use of one of the spaces, and then just a normal final since this project has gone on for a long time.
And there's been a lot of tree loss, which is now really exposed the site. I want Al to really take a good look at that.
So the 4 redwood trees are in.
Yes.
Right then, any other commissioners' reports? I don't have any with Commissioner Flynn. No. Right then, do we need to go to the public for?
Let me just give you a little preview of some of the things that are coming up from a staff report point of view. Everyone has been tracking the housing element for now 2 years. And our latest set of comments are back from HCD, due back tomorrow. Our HCD had a number of people that left, that quit. And so a bunch of us got new reviewers. So we were assigned a new reviewer and we reached out to them to try to set up a meeting. And unfortunately, we never heard back from them. And then over the weekend on Saturday, our reviewer emailed us and said, could you send the housing element again? The link doesn't work. So I don't know if that means they haven't looked at it for almost 60 days. But I just don't know what that means, but we're expecting comments tomorrow. So once we receive those, we'll distribute them back out in our normal channels. So everyone who has been on the housing e-notify will hear about what those results are once we get them in.
And it was just over the weekend that they contacted you to ask for the, and they're gonna give comments tomorrow.
Yes.
Alrighty then.
Now, it could just be the change in reviewer. You know what I mean? It could be that someone else had downloaded them 2 months ago and there was a mix up, mix-ups happen. But it also could be that they didn't look at it. So I just don't know what that means, but I do have some empathy for the reviewers that were trying to do this and are now just kind of hanging on with a lot of vacancies.
And what's the status if they don't review it in the time that they're supposed to?
We expect we will receive a letter because they're required by law. The concern is that the letter won't be detailed because they haven't had time to give us a detailed review. So that's really what the concern is, but I think there will be a letter by the end of the day tomorrow. I'll be surprised if there's not. So that's happening there. I've gotten a lot of questions about why the Planning Commission hasn't been meeting. And it's because we don't have any items. This rarely happens. All the projects that we're working on right now are either at the ASCC level or we have quite a few revisions to previously approved projects, but none of them require Planning Commission approval. Staff and consultants are working on the zoning code amendments that implement the housing element. So we're working on those, but they are not ready yet for Planning Commission review. We're going to be releasing them to the public first so that everybody has a time to look at them and think about them. We'll be doing like a public question and answer session because we've heard from the public that it's hard for them to engage in the formal Planning Commission meetings because they try to ask questions, but it's not really set up for questions. It's more set up for comments. So we're going to do some question and answer sessions so that people can ask us questions so that they can engage with the Planning Commission. So that's a big thing that's coming. But right now, just because of circumstance, there are no items that are ready for Planning Commission. So there's kind of a little bit of rumors, like sometimes there are like that we're canceling them for some other reason, but it's not because of our staff availability. It's just because there's no items to be heard.
Way back when we weren't so busy, every couple of years we would study something. Each commission, we would take something and we would work it. And it was great. We studied blue oaks one year. But anyway, that's,
Yeah, now we end up studying a lot of things that the state tells us to study instead of what may be initiated by the town. Yeah. Okay, then upcoming ASCC meetings. We have a fence application coming up that on Tantagus that the property owners have requested that ASCC members come out individually instead of at a site meeting. So we'll be reaching out to you in order to schedule those appointments. We did want you to see it, but there is not a strict requirement for people to host a site meeting, and they would prefer not to. So they would rather host you either individually or in pairs. So there will not be a Brown Act site meeting for that one. So yeah, so that's coming up.
troubling, yeah.
Yeah, so just there's some complexity developed around it. So that's coming up. And then I mentioned to you once before at 127 Pinion. I'm never really Pinion.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm never really sure the right way to say it. That's the large property. They put in some, like what they described as kind of like walking paths or kind of like trails on the property, but have triggered concerns related to tree removal and site development. And so we were hoping to get ASCC members and a couple of conservation committee members out in the site to walk it. This is a preliminary review. They've already done this work and they're coming back for a post approval. They said they didn't know what was supposed to happen. And so we're working on kind of a unique procedure to be able to address that. So I want to draw your attention to that because it'll be kind of like a big site visit and sort of hike around. So we'll let you know when that's coming so that people can make that decision if they're up for the big hike.
Right, because we don't have a meeting for 3 weeks, do we? Because our next one would be August the 14th.
We expect to have a meeting on August 14th and the 28th. So we expect to have the upcoming meetings.
Yes, but the gap now is 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah, because there's a 5-week month. Yeah.
We don't have a meeting next time.
No,
We don't have a meeting until the 14th.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
it's not every other
Right.
because of the extra week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the Monday is the first day. Right.
We have a addition at 119 Campo coming up. And then we have a redesign of 42 Santa Maria that the ASCC approved maybe like 4 years ago. And they have completely changed the project. And so they're coming back for a new approval. So those are some of the things that we have coming up. And then it's just something I mentioned because it's of townwide significance is the fire district has proposed a new fire code, and those are similar to building codes. And so that we've provided some comments to them. The Wildfire Preparedness Committee has provided comments. So it's going through their board right now and then expected to go to council in September. So just wanted you to be aware of that. There are not very many things that would come like directly into your purview from the ASCC point of view, but it is important. So just wanted you to be aware of it in case anybody asks you. So that's my staff report unless anyone has any questions.
So you said you provided comments to the fire district. Is it possible to get hold of those comments? Are they public?
No, they're an administrative draft.
So they're not public?
Correct.
Oh. Is it possible just to summarize a little bit what your comments are then, or is it?
The comments were really technical. So in my review, I was asking about internal consistency, language, do you know what I mean? Consistency between one section or another, asking for explanation of certain things because the building code and fire code have a lot of cross references. We wanted to make sure we understood the cross references. They have added some additional fire district approvals for things that they're going to do within their shop that are separate from the town's process. That's within their legal authority to do it, but I was asking them some questions about that. So it's those kinds of pretty technical, minute kind of things.
Because when I read through that, well, most of it, I had a hard time figuring out really what was changing. And the one thing that seemed like it was changing was how they were going to figure out the square footage of when it triggers another level of building codes changes. So it seemed like how they calculated the square footage of what's being modified has been pretty dramatically lowered. And I was confused about that. And so,
So we asked them to change it to be jurisdiction specific because each of the jurisdictions they deal with, us, Woodside, and the county, have our own definitions of what's considered a new building and when things
Right,
apply. So we asked them to align it to the definition that we already use for our WUI building code standards. So my understanding of the current draft is that's what it says, that they'll use the local jurisdiction's rule instead of having their own rule. So when we're implementing the building code and the fire code, we're using the same rule for every kind of project.
because it seemed like to me, if for example, I wanted to upgrade my windows to be tempered and fire safe, that all of a sudden it would then use the square footage of the entire room as being new or whatever, altered. And so the more windows you change, the more the square footage seemed to change. So then at some point you would be hit with having to install sprinklers, having to do all these other things. I mean, maybe I'm not understanding it, maybe taxes too, but I don't know. So-
Yeah, I can't speak too much more to their definition that they had in their original draft,
Okay.
but I can tell you that our town definition does not do that. You can always upgrade your windows.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Yeah, you can always upgrade to fire resistant windows.
Okay.
Okay,
So do we go now go to public comments and staff report?
Yeah.
Commissioner?
we have one member of the public on Zoom, and now we have two planning commissioners in the audience. Caroline has her hand up.
Right, go ahead, Carolyn.
Great. Thank you so much. I was a little late, so I was not able to talk during oral communication. But by any chance, did we receive answers to my questions that I asked at the last ASCC meeting? These pertain to the CUP. So my question was, how many times can a CUP be amended? And then a particular question regarding Woodside Priory is the base amount of students which was used by the second amended CUP, if that was correct, and if the planning department was not supposed to use the original from the master plan. Then another question, which I thought was brought up also at the last ASCC meeting, was a status report on Stanford. And I believe that the response was that we would hear something or see something at the end of July. Is that still planned that way, or has there been a change? Thank you.
I'm hopeful Laura has some answers to those questions.
I don't believe that I said that we would see something on Stanford by the end of July. I don't recall saying that. I apologize if I did. The status of the Stanford application is that our new legal counsel is finishing the review of the response to comments. So we got, as you all know, hundreds of pages of comments on the EIR. Our counsel's reviewing that, and then they'll go through a revision, and then that'll be released to the public. And then presumably at that point, the public meeting process will start. So there's no definitive timeline for that project at this time. In regards to CUP amendments, there is no limit on the number of CUP amendments that can be granted. So the Planning Commission looks at each CUP and the merits of that particular case and against the findings. And of course, they consider the past history, but there's not a limit on the number of CUP amendments that can be done. In regards to the CEQA associated with that, staff feels confident that we used the right CEQA exemption. It was confirmed by 2 attorneys at the time. We double checked the math. We believe that it was done correctly. And we have tried to explain that in the past to Ms. Vertonghen.
Right, thank you, Laura. Do we have any further public comment?
There are no other hands up.
Right, in that case, I will close public comment and move on to the approval of the minutes. Which I don't remember seeing in our packet.
I'm not available I don't feel comfortable approving minutes for meetings that I wasn't at.
Oh, the minutes were not finished by the transcriptionist, so we
You haven't got
technically
them.
should have taken this heading out, but see how there's no date listed?
No, but I thought we got to it.
Yes, you do. Thank you.
All right, does that mean I don't need public comment on approval of the minutes? if there
Correct.
weren't any? All right,
Correct.
then. In that case, can I move on to adjournment?
You can.
All right, meeting adjourned.
Thank you very much.